Abraham willed all that he owned to Isaac, and in verse 6 it says, but to Abraham's sons by concubines, Abraham gave gifts while he was still living, and he sent them away from his son Isaac eastward to the land of the east. So that would imply that you've got Isaac and you've got the sons of the concubines. Now,
can I ask a question at this point?
Sure.
The rights of the firstborn.
Yes.
Is that to do with the father or the mother?
The covenant was actually first established with Abraham, then his firstborn Ishmael, and then Isaac later on. So anyone who says the covenant is not established with Ishmael is completely and utterly wrong.
Weekends in Israel are Friday and Saturday.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you're literally doing 50 hours of Torah study for 2 years.
Yes.
So that's quite intense, really.
It's extremely intense.
And how did you find it? Did you find it?
A bit too intense for myself, to be honest.
Yeah.
It was an amazing experience.
And is there like an examination at the end of it, or
No, there's not.
So would the rabbi say, okay, you've met the standard, or what?
No.
So
It's a personal decision when you think that that you've got what you can get out of it, and that's what's going to help you to lead a productive Jewish life. For the rest of your life.
And have you continued your studies?
Yeah, I continue my studies. I learn in the evenings. In a local synagogue. I learn in the mornings. I learn here and there.
So
I
you see,
to university.
Oh, you're going to university as well? Do you study? Is it
an academic subject. Law.
Okay. Oh, you're doing law, yeah? Oh, excellent. How long have you got left now before you finish?
I'm in my second year.
Second year.
Another year
after this. That's nice. And is that what you want to do? Practice as a lawyer? Or, yeah.
Yeah. Because there's not enough Jewish lawyers. I think.
Well, that's good. Clever. Is that true?
No.
I think there are a lot of Jewish lawyers. There's a lot of Jewish lawyers.
That's you know which topic would be good today?
What's that?
Ishaq and Ishmael.
Oh, Ishaq and Ismail. But I'm actually not the expert on the Old Testament or the New Testament.
No, it's not about the old, it's about Islamic perspective.
So why don't you come in and inshallah have the discussion with Josh then?
Yeah, Josh, you
Because Josh has studied, mashallah, formally. He's quite well. You're quite learned when it comes to. I mean, I wouldn't regard you as an average Jew who's perhaps not, been through all the formal teachings and learnings and what you've done. So
I mean, the average Orthodox Jewish boy around in London will have gone to yeshiva for at least a year.
At least a year.
Yeah.
I think it's essential to learn the groundings of your religion, because I think that it will ensure that your practice of that religion will become more sort of grounded in itself as well, right?
So it's not just that, because in Judaism we see the learning of Torah and Torah-related topics as an essential thing in its own right, not just as a means to an end, as an end in itself.
Right. Yes. I think we would look at the formal teaching of the Quran and of the Hadith as something that makes a person grounded in order to not only facilitate their own practice and to do practice properly, but then also, of course, to help their family or on a wider sense, let's say if they become scholars, to be able to teach others as well. So I suppose that's important. Brother Imran, we're going to, inshallah, have a discussion with Josh about Ishmael and Ishaq. So we want you to join the discussion.
Let's surround you.
Yeah, let's surround Josh from let's two Muslims surrounding the poor Jewish soul in the middle. Yes.
I got used to that quite quickly.
But I think most of us are quite nice.
I was intimidated at the beginning.
Okay.
Back in the days when we spoke the first time.
Oh, with the Hamza. Oh, that was about 3-4 years ago.
That was 3-4 years ago. Yeah.
1 second.
Yeah.
I think
But since then,
you started with me first.
no, I started with him before.
With Hamza.
Yeah. Well, actually, Shabbat Yosef, and before that.
Shabbat Yosef.
That's not on YouTube.
No. But to be broken into Speaker's Corner with Hamza is a bit.
That was.
No, not the easiest thing. Where's Imran gone?
No, because we're dealing with the situation.
Oh, are you? Okay, subhanAllah. Okay. So, Brother Hashim, where are you? I'll be more of a listener and a learner. I'll be learning rather than the speaking.
Better get out my Tanakh.
Yeah, get your Tanakh out. You might need it. With Hashim, you probably will need it, yes.
Indeed.
With me, you'd probably be able to...
Can I ask both of you a question?
Me, you want to ask me or him?
Both.
Yes.
You have Abraham.
We have Abraham, yes.
You have Abraham. You have Sarah.
Sarah, yes.
He has Sarah.
Yes.
Both.
You have Hagar.
Yes.
He is not from Hagar.
Yes.
Leah.
Yes. What's the point? Make your point.
Who was Leah?
Leah, I don't know. Who was Leah?
Leah was the first wife of Jacob.
Was Leah not Abraham's third? Was Leah not the woman of Abraham?
No. Abraham had 3 wives. The first was Sarah, the second was Hagar, the third was Keturah. Although some say that Hagar was another name for Keturah, but that's not explicit in the text.
Leah, no?
But Leah was the first wife of Jacob.
Well, the question actually is, it was interesting seeing a Jewish person and a Muslim person. I actually want to know the history of Leah, to be honest with you.
Why do you want to know the history?
Well, it's an Irish. It's an Irish name.
Okay.
Yeah. So I just wanted, like, it would have been actually, I believe, in Irish.
Yeah, the first one.
It was
When
Jacob's
Laban
wife.
tricked
It wasn't
Jacob, so he ended up with Leah first.
So, to be honest, I'm not the right person to ask. I'm not that knowledgeable on.
Well, that's the first time anybody's actually
Hashim, do you know about the? No.
Jacob's wife? No, I don't.
No, all I knew.
But I think that's. I don't think there's much history about Leah, is there?
So Leah was the older of the 2 twins. In Jewish tradition, she was the one who was originally supposed to marry Esau, but she didn't want to marry Esau.
Okay.
And Laban ended up tricking Jacob and giving him Leah instead as a wife. And then Jacob had to work another 7 years to marry Rachel.
He married both of them.
Yeah. And then he married another 2. He got most of his sons from Leah, in fact. And the Jewish sources go into the reasons, spiritual reasons why it had to be her and this and that.
Yeah, I know there's a whole history. I just want to
Interesting.
clarify
Okay.
something.
Good to learn something new, isn't it?
Yeah.
Cheers, thank you.
Nice to meet you. Bye bye.
So yeah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just wanted to see where the Muslims and the Jewish people differ with regards to the children of Abraham. So we both agree that Abraham is someone we recognize as a prophet, someone who God loved. You know, he's called Khalil Allah in the Islamic terminology. Means the friend of Allah. Yes, like a special friend, not just a friend, most dear friend of Allah. Is there a title for Abraham in the Jewish
So in
tradition?
one of the liturgical poems that we recite on Friday nights, it's called Abraham, Avraham Ohavo, the Abraham who God loved.
Oh yes, of course he loved. Yeah. So I think the main contention between the Jews and the Muslims and even the Christians would be because many of them reject Ishmael as being the legitimate son and as being the legitimate inheritor to Abraham's legacy, and they only hold Isaac as the legitimate son and inheritor to his legacy.
Yes.
So why is that, even though both are the children of Abraham? In fact, Ishmael is the firstborn, right?
Yes. They're both firstborns of their respective mothers, but from Abraham himself, Ishmael is the firstborn son.
Okay.
In Jewish law, however, inheritance with regards to a firstborn is to do with the firstborn of the mother, not the firstborn of the father.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, because I heard otherwise. I heard the firstborn gets the inheritance, right?
Yes.
Regardless of which mother they're born from.
No, it's
Because-
to do with it is to do with the mother.
Do you not trace your tribe from the father?
The tribe comes from the father, yes.
Okay,
But
so
in
what comes
terms
from the
of-
mother then?
So there's a few things that come from the mother. For example, membership of the Jewish people, first and foremost, comes from the mother.
Sorry, membership?
Membership of the Jewish people, i.e. being born into the covenants to begin with, that you'll be obligated in the laws, that's what we would call be part of the Jewish people, that comes from the mother. However, there's another thing which also has to do with the mother, and that's to do with, are you the firstborn son of the mother, in which case you'll get a double portion. I'm almost 100% sure that if a mother has 2 firstborn sons from different...
Sorry, a mother?
Let's say a father, let's say a man has 2 wives and has a son from each one is considered the firstborn of the respective wife, and I believed both of them were supposed to get a double portion. Not 100% sure, but 98%.
Okay. So when you say mother, you mean the mother has to be Jewish, is that what you mean?
Oh, that's also true.
Okay, so your Jewishness comes from the mother, but your
Yes.
tribe comes from the father.
Yes.
Yes, that's right?
Yes.
Okay. I didn't want to actually misrepresent the Jewish understanding of the mother and father. But what I meant is like, you know, when Abraham prayed for a child,
Yes.
so God heard his prayer,
Yes.
and the result of that was
First Ishmael and then Isaac.
exactly. So the first, Isaac was a bonus if you ask me. The first result was Ishmael. So his prayer was answered by the birth of Ishmael.
So it's interesting you say that, because I know that there will be disputes about whether or not this is a legitimate source to begin with.
What,
That's of course a different
the Bible?
argument. About whether or not this has been tampered with or not, that's a different argument. But assuming that this has not been tampered with and that this is fine, which is what of course I would affirm, we can see that prior to Ishmael's birth, God promises Abraham a son. And Abraham then goes and marries Hagar, with Sarah is the one who says he should do that, and they have Ishmael. Now, at that point, the text does not tell us that this is the son that God has promised. In fact, just after that, God says the son's coming, which tells us that he hadn't yet been born. So the son that was actually promised was not the son of Hagar, the slave woman from Egypt. It was rather going to be from Sarah herself.
No. When you say the son was promised, so that conversation was taking place with Sarah, not with Abraham.
No. With Abraham. So
With Abraham.
There's two different conversations. So if we go first,
Yeah, because the first prayer that Abraham prayed to God was to grant him a son, isn't it?
So
There was such a prayer, and that had been fulfilled. That prayer had been fulfilled in Ishmael being born as the first child of Abraham. And by the way, Hagar was his wife, isn't it? Do you agree with that?
and then later on, he became a wife.
Exactly, but that's what the Bible says,
Yeah.
or at least the Tanakh says, and also the Torah that's in English today. So
Of course, it's interesting because in Genesis chapter 26, I believe, when Abraham, just before he dies, I think it's 26, I might be wrong.
sorry, who dies?
Just before Abraham dies,
Yeah.
is it 26, 25? It says that to the sons of the concubines, no, it's chapter 25, verse 5. Abraham willed all that he owned to Isaac, and in verse 6 it says, but to Abraham's sons by concubines, Abraham gave gifts while he was still living, and he sent them away from his son Isaac eastward to the land of the east. So that would imply that you've got Isaac and you've got the sons of the concubines. Now,
Can I ask a question at this point?
sure,
The rights of the firstborn,
yes.
is that to do with the father or the mother?
So I believe, this is what I was saying before, that's to do with the mother. That
The rights of the firstborn.
That the firstborn of the mother is the one that gets a double portion. If there's more than one firstborn of a mother, then both of them will get a double portion. Now that's, of course, according to the laws of Yerusha, the laws of inheritance that are part of the Sinaitic covenant. Whether or not that already applies in the name of Abraham is something that could
I
be
think you're wrong.
debated.
I think you're wrong. Because the rights of the firstborn is it says whether it be from the wife you love it or it doesn't matter. So when it talks about the rights of the firstborn, it's referring to the different types of wives.
That's a very good point there.
So the rights of the firstborn is not necessarily which woman had the baby first; it's who the fathered first.
That's what I told you
That's a
earlier, isn't it?
possibility.
Well, no, that's
Because
that's
the
a
right
fact.
of the
That's the rights of the
firstborn-
firstborn. Whether it's from the wife you love or the wife you hate, it
Right,
doesn't
let's
matter.
go to that. A second. You might be right. I'm going to go to that.
It's not the first time I've had this conversation, so I think I am
Go
right.
to that. Deuteronomy chapter 24.
Sorry, Anna.
Yeah.
No, it's not 24.
Don't hide behind no mother's girls.
25. No, it's going to be 23, isn't it? Right. If a man has two wives, one loved and the other unloved, and both the loved and the unloved have borne him sons, but the firstborn is
There you
You're
go.
right. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
So we settled that matter.
I don't think this is going to be the first time.
Said he must accept the firstborn, the son, and allot him to the abundant portion. Okay. Good job.
So far now, who's the firstborn? Isaac or Ishmael?
Okay.
So the firstborn of Abraham, per this, would indeed be Ishmael. However, there is still the issue of the fact that Hagar was the maidservant.
Yeah, but she was given as a wife.
What's that?
But if we say at the beginning that she is a concubine, then the law is going.
Well, here's the problem you've got now. The
Yes.
the 12 tribes of Israel came from Jacob and his 2 wives and their concubines. And his concubines.
And who's the firstborn?
No, so are you saying that the 12 tribes of Israel are not equal?
Of course, they're not equal.
They're not equal.
No, there's always been a little bit of a lesser status to the 4 that were the sons of the concubines, which is why, by the way, it says that Joseph used
So
to...
where does it say that? Sorry, that the rights of the firstborn if your wife is a concubine?
So that's not explicit in the...
So where are you getting that from then?
This is
Where you
the
getting that
oral Torah.
Where are you getting that
Okay,
from?
so it's not from the Tanakh.
So it's not from the Tanakh.
It's not explicit in the Tanakh. No.
Okay.
Right, so it doesn't say that in your book.
No, it doesn't say it. Okay.
You just kind of got it from where?
It's from the oral Torah,
All right.
right?
So what does the oral Torah actually say?
So in the Old Torah, there's a tractate called Bava Basra, where there's a very long chapter called Yesh Nochlim, all about the laws of inheritance.
Okay.
And I believe somewhere in there is a distinction made between a wife and a concubine. I do not have a Bava Basra with me.
Okay, because you had been wrong earlier.
I was wrong
I
earlier.
thought I will confirm with you if you have the source.
So I don't have the
If you don't
source.
have the source, that's fine. Okay, let's talk about the covenant because this is, I think, the most crucial question. And the Christians often use this, that the covenant was established with Isaac, not with Ishmael. What do you make of that?
Well, in Genesis, that's what we find. The covenant was made with Isaac.
Okay, what was the first covenant established with Abraham?
The first covenant established with Abraham, depends what you consider a covenant, but I would say probably the covenant between the parts.
Between
Between the parts.
What parts?
Sorry, but Genesis chapter 15. Where what happens is...
Covenant between the parts?
Yeah,
What parts?
What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. I never heard that before.
That's what we call it, the the covenant between the parts. Where basically God tells to him, bring me a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old she-goat, a 3-year-old ram, a turtle dove, and a young bird. He brought to him all these and cut them in 2, placing each half opposite the other, but he did not cut up the bird. Birds of prey came down upon the carcasses, and Abram drove them away. Right, so this is what we call the covenant between the parts.
Where does it
Right,
say
he
it's a covenant in there?
Does it say the word covenant in here? Let me have a look.
I didn't hear it.
It does not say the word covenant.
If you remember, the first covenant was actually circumcision.
Right, that's the first one that says the word
Okay?
covenant. That's true.
So the first covenant, which is circumcision, Abraham was to circumcise himself and everyone in his household. So let me read the passage in Genesis,
Chapter
chapter 17, verse 13 to 14. It says, whether born in your household or bought with your money, they must be circumcised. My covenant in your flesh is to be an everlasting covenant.
Yeah.
Any uncircumcised male who has not been circumcised in the flesh will be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. Now this was the first covenant that God established with Abraham and his household.
That's the first time the word covenant is
Since-
used. Yes.
So, well, this just mashes up your claim about the idea that if the wife is a concubine or not.
Yeah.
It even said if he's a slave.
No, that's to do with circumcision, not to do with inheritance.
That's to do with the covenant.
Circumcision is not the same as inheritance.
The covenant.
So it's to do with the question was about the covenant.
Yes, the
And
covenant.
not only a covenant, this is
Before
an
that-
everlasting covenant,
Yes.
by the way, which Paul broke. So we'll come to that later. You probably don't believe in Paul, but if there was a
do.
Christian here, I'll bring that up. Okay, because Paul actually said is a circumcision of the heart, which no one was supposed to do away with because God told Abraham this was an everlasting covenant,
Yeah.
not a temporary one.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so anyway, put that aside for now.
But I think can I add one little thing? Sorry,
Yeah,
this
sure,
point.
go on,
See what ABC? When it says everlasting covenant, it doesn't mean it's going to last unconditionally. There's conditions to the covenant. So
Only God can undo it.
yeah, no, God gives a covenant, but
Yeah.
gives conditions to the covenant.
Yeah.
So clearly, like for example, circumcision is one of the conditions of the covenant.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
Right? Circumcision is something we have to
So
do,
the point
and
here
in
is
return, there's something else.
Yeah, so I'm just making
Yeah.
the point that even though the covenant was given as an everlasting thing, it was conditional. That's all I'm going to say. But once the conditions are broken, then of course you've broken the covenant.
So
you break the covenant, it doesn't mean the covenant has ceased to exist.
No, it means you.
no, we are not saying that. Unless God,
good.
obviously, unless
God, unless God.
yeah. Like if it's something which is abrogated by God, then that's different. What do you mean? Can God not abrogate if He wants to?
Can God create a square circle? We're not talking about what God can and can't.
No, God never said that He's going to create a
How is that square circle?
Exactly.
Because the idea that God would change in some way, would abrogate, is something which contradicts the idea of God.
If God Himself
is
abrogates it,
unchanging.
if God Himself abrogates
Why is that?
a
Why is
law,
that? What's the problem with God changing it?
Because if God has said something is everlasting, and then He goes back on it.
oh yeah,
he's
that I agree.
changing.
That I agree. But
That's
if God did not say
abrogation.
a law is everlasting, and if He abrogates that, then what's the issue then?
Would you say rejecting Jesus was kind of breaking the covenant?
No, because Jesus is not a part of the covenant to start with.
Prophets of God. No.
Jesus is not a prophet.
No.
according to this.
No. But if Jesus was a prophet, have you broke the covenant?
If he was a prophet,
Then you broke the covenant.
Then that would be another sin. Yes,
Would you have broke the covenant?
that would be another sin within the covenant. If he was in fact.
So effectively, you
Stop.
could say Jews that reject Jesus, if he is indeed a prophet, are out the covenant. Then, yeah. All right, carry on.
No, not out of the covenant.
They've broken it.
No. Okay. Do you know what it means to break the covenant?
We need to listen to this question. Asking.
Yeah. So I'll explain to you what it means to break the covenant. If let's say I
Sorry to interrupt.
say
No, it's
gossip
okay.
about a person, right? So that's a sin,
Right.
So if I commit a sin, so that is something which has broken the covenant. But it doesn't mean that I'm suddenly exempt from the covenant.
So what
right?
does-
It
what-
doesn't
what
mean
exempts you?
that I do one sin and then
Right.
and then suddenly I'm allowed to do everything else.
So what does exempt you?
Nothing exempts me from the covenant.
Well, what's the condition?
always part
What's the
of the
conditions of the covenant?
That I do the laws.
You keep the laws.
If I keep the law, then I will receive blessing.
But how do you keep the
if
law?
If I don't keep the law, then I won't receive blessing.
But if new prophets come with new law and you don't keep that law, are you still within the covenant? Are you still keeping
As
the
in
law?
prophets coming with a law that contradict the previous, or just simply just new laws?
Complement it.
Like you give some sort of because I'm not really sure what it is you're saying.
I'm saying if a prophet came after,
Yes.
law-
Let's call this prophet Mark, for example.
Let's
Or
call it-
Charlie. Let's call him Charlie.
no, let's call this prophet Muhammad.
Oh, right, fine. So a prophet
and he
a guy
comes with some
along,
new law. He comes with a new
Muhammad,
law. He comes
and-
with a new law.
And what kind of a law is?
Whatever the law
says, It just you've made,
Let's say
you've
dietary
chosen
law.
the name.
Let's say
dietary law.
Right. So dietary law, you're not allowed to eat.
Well, no, we want something that's
let's say-
extra. We want something extra.
You're not allowed
They've
to
already got
eat-
the dietary law.
You're not allowed to eat cows anymore.
No,
right?
no.
But for them, for example, camel is not allowed to permit it.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
A prophet comes along and says you have to pray 5 times a day.
Okay. Right. You have to pray 5 times a day.
Yes, sir.
So that will depend now. Is the prophet saying that this has been the law all along?
No, hello there.
Or is he saying
No, this is something new.
So the prophet's saying a whole new law now. Instead of
Yeah.
3 times, we're now doing 5 times.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that will depend whether or not the prophet is changing anything that came before. If he was, then he'd be a false prophet. If he's a true prophet, then we'd have to do so.
Okay, so if a prophet comes and say this is the last message from God,
Yeah.
yes, and I'm the last messenger,
Right.
then what do you say?
If he's a true prophet, then sure.
Okay.
Right.
If he's a true
Now,
prophet.
if you reject that prophet, have you broken the covenant?
Once again, we will have committed another sin within the
No.
covenant.
Is he rejecting a prophet of God breaking the covenant or not?
Yes, just like every other sin.
No.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So for him, a covenant is basically just disobedience of God.
No.
In a way.
No.
From what you told me so far.
A covenant with
Yeah.
God means that God promised us blessings, and
there's conditions
we,
to it.
And we, in order to receive those blessings, have to keep the law.
There's conditions to
and
it.
If we don't keep the laws, then we have committed a sin against God, and we won't receive blessings.
Right. So
if I say gossip about somebody, or if I steal from
No,
somebody,
we're
or
not
if I
saying
eat
that.
camel
No, we
meat-
didn't say that, did we? Well, the point we made is that if a prophet comes, a true prophet of God,
Yeah.
with laws,
Yeah, and you don't believe
and you don't accept them,
Okay.
are you out of the covenant then?
out of the, you're not exempt from the covenant.
Why not? You're not keeping the law.
Because if you commit a sin, it doesn't exempt
You're not
you
keeping
from
the law.
keeping the rest of them.
No, but you're not actually keeping the law.
Actually, for them, for them, the law doesn't change.
The law doesn't
That's
change.
what. There's a difference between the Muslims.
Yeah.
We believe that God can abrogate the laws depending on the what do you say, the Sharia of the Prophet or the Messenger. But for them, you cannot abrogate the law because God is unchanging. But then I think we have sidetracked, so let's get back on track with regards to covenant.
Thank you, Hisham. That's exactly what I was trying to say.
That's fine.
Because I'm trying to help the viewers understand what do we actually mean by covenant, and how would you, because it's conditional.
So for those people,
carte blanche, it's conditional.
For those people who say that the covenant was not established with Ishmael but with Isaac, I say actually the covenant was first established with Ishmael because he was the firstborn. He was first to be circumcised. I think, if I remember correctly from the Bible source, Ishmael was something like 14 years old when Isaac was born. Is that right? Thereabouts.
Very likely. Very likely.
So he was already 14 years old in his teens. Yes, and he was already circumcised. That means the covenant was actually first established with Abraham, then his firstborn Ishmael, and then Isaac later on. So anyone who says the covenant is not established with Ishmael is completely and utterly wrong.
Yes, you're right about the 14. Yes, because it says he was circumcised at 13, and of course a year later is when Isaac
was born. Exactly. Yeah.
Right.
Do you believe that narrative is historical?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
So, how did Am I sidetracking?
No, you're okay. I wanted to make this point about the covenant, and because they deny the covenant being established. Because Ishmael, we have already sorted that.
Because he's quoting this as kind of history. Because if you read the narrative, it's acting like Ishmael's a baby.
Oh, you're going to that? Okay, about the sacrifice?
We did that last time.
No.
We did that last time. Remember?
Let's rephrase what you just said. Yeah, we established I was right last time on this point.
We didn't establish you were right last time.
Was he a baby or was he an adult?
I gave an explanation which you didn't.
What was your explanation how Abraham put the baby on his mother?
Doesn't say baby.
No, the child.
It says the child.
Put it on his mother.
Yes.
How old was he?
He was at the time in his 20s or 30s or something.
20s or 30s? 20s or 30s?
Yes.
I was going to say like 16, 17.
Yeah, I was talking teenagers.
I'm talking 16. You're saying 20s or 30s?
Something like that.
So Abraham put his 30-year-old son on his mother.
Why?
On her shoulders.
On her shoulders.
The Jewish explanation of this is that he was very sick at the time. Ishmael was very sick.
So his mother carried him?
Yes.
And why was he very sick, according to what?
Does it say that?
Where does it say he was sick?
This is once again in the oral tradition.
All right, so this oral tradition, this is getting a bit dodgy, this.
I was going to ask a question. How old was his mother at the time?
That doesn't say. We're never told about her age.
Well, she must be at least what?
Well, if Abraham was
30, if he's 30.
If Abraham was 99 years old when he had Ishmael, can you imagine how old Sarah or Hagar will be?
Hagar were never told her age anyway.
Okay, I don't think they talk about her age. Okay.
I would presume significantly older than Ishmael.
Yeah, she would have been significantly older than Ishmael.
And she would be carrying a grown man
30-year-old.
a 30-year-old on her shoulders.
Now, first of all, so let's pretend for a second that it would be unreasonable to say that she is carrying him, which I don't think it's that unreasonable to say.
It's ridiculous.
But even if
it's a baby, the narrative is a baby.
It doesn't say baby.
It doesn't have to. The narrative says it.
No, the narrative does not say baby.
The narrative says, put her on the shoulder. The baby cried. Put her under the bush. Hold the baby up. What are you talking about? Hold the ladder.
Does a 20-year-old, even if he's sick, does he cry?
Does he cry under a bush?
Well, this one, yes.
And she puts him under a bush.
I mean, cry like a baby.
Cries like a baby.
Yeah.
20-year-old. And then when she's told to hold him up. 20-year-old.
Well,
Josh,
to be fair,
Josh, it's just utter nonsense, mate.
No, it's not nonsense.
It's utter nonsense. The narrative does not make any sense.
Are you saying it's waffling?
It's waffling.
I'm not waffling.
But Josh,
I would advise.
I would say he's waffling.
I would advise.
The text is clear.
But Josh,
one second.
You'd have to accept that a non-Jew,
Yes.
without any bias,
Yes.
would probably find that.
One second. What's the verse?
Yes.
Let me read the verse.
I accept that somebody who has not read
Anybody here not a Jew?
doesn't know what they're.
All right, let me just read this.
Anyone who knows? I think all of them.
All of them. Yeah.
Except him and his pal.
No, but I think to be fair, you can't be Muslim either. Not a Jew or a Muslim.
Anyone not a Muslim? Any atheists or Christians in the house? Even Christians, because they're going to be biased. All right, anyway, the camera's watching. What's the verse?
I think Genesis 16.
Genesis 16. What's the kindest?
Oh, is it about the sacrifice? Which one?
No,
is
no, no. This is talking about when he got sent
Genesis
out.
16.
Oh, so it's not
That's
16.
That's Genesis 20.
All right. So what Genesis is it when? Genesis 20.
Oh no, it's not. Is it 21? Yeah, it's 21.
21.
So, Josh, does it explicitly say the age of Ishmael?
Yeah, Genesis
No, it doesn't.
21,
Okay.
17.
So it's
God
regarding
heard the
to
boy
be that
crying.
age.
One second.
What's the reason?
One second.
What is the reason that it's
Okay.
regarding to 30 years?
Okay. One second.
21, 17.
So this is no. You're saying this is talking about 20, 30-year-old guy, yeah?
Something like that.
All right. Early the next morning, Abraham took some food and a skin of water and gave them to Hagar. He set them on her shoulders, then sent her off with the boy. She went on her way and wandered in the desert of Beersheba. When the water in the skin was gone, she put the boy under one of the bushes. Then she went off and sat about a bow shot away. I cannot watch the boy die. As she sat there, she began to sob. God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven and said to her, "What is the matter, Hagar? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Lift the boy up and take him by the hand, for I will make him into a great nation."
Yes.
This is talking about 30-year-old.
Yes.
God heard the boy
If
crying. So you
got-
call a 30-year-old a boy?
This particular one, yes.
Why this particular one?
Because you're sick, you call him a boy?
If you go a little bit further back in the chapter, if you go back to in the same chapter, go back to verse.
Yeah, he is a boy. We know he's a boy. You said
Go
he's a man.
Go a little bit back. You'll see verse 9, right? Sarah was the son. So Sarah saw the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had born to Abraham playing. She said to Abraham, "Cast out that slave woman and her son, for the son of that slave shall not share in the inheritance of his son Isaac." So if you want to take all of this literally, then you're going to see that over there he's playing, right? So we would say that he is a very immature individual indeed.
A very
If we're going to take
mature
all of this
30-year-old.
of this all literally.
Well, why do you
right?
have
In
30?
actual,
Let him finish. Let him finish.
Look, the timeline is simple.
he doesn't let.
Let
he
Josh
doesn't, he doesn't
finish.
let.
No, but here's the
people finish.
problem.
I had this with him
No,
last time.
let Josh finish.
Just one second. No, but Josh is waffling. I'll tell you why you're waffling, Josh. I'll tell you why you're waffling, Josh. I'll tell you why you're waffling. He did finish.
No. What I'm saying, Josh, with that, what you just said, is that he was playing.
Yes.
A 6-month-old child can be playing. A 1-year-old child can be playing.
Yes.
No, 1 second.
It doesn't make them a 30-year-old man, does it?
Okay.
I wasn't proving to there what his age was.
Okay.
That will come if he allows me.
Okay. Let him make his point.